What if I told you there's a top secret space plane orbiting Earth right now, and it's about to do something never seen before?
Okay.
It's not like the start of a Tom Clancy novel.
Right.
Well, it's not. This is the reality of something called the X-37B pick. And today, we're diving into what makes this mysterious space plane so fascinating and why this latest mission, well, it is everyone talking. So
Right.
why should you care about a secretive space plane?
Yeah.
I mean, think of it this way. The X-37B, it might just be a preview of the future. We're talking about cutting-edge technology, the growing influence of space in global affairs.
And, yeah.
Maybe even a touch of that, Space race intrigue. All right, let's break this down. What exactly are we dealing with when we talk about the X-37B?
So, picture this. A miniature space shuttle, unmanned and reusable. That's the X-37B in essence. It's a project developed by Boeing for the United States Space Force, the USSF, and it's designed to circle our planet for ridiculously long periods. In fact, its sixth mission, just to give you an idea, clocked in at a record-breaking 908 days in orbit.
Okay, so a space plane that can stay up there for years. That's impressive and maybe a little unsettling. But the real question is, what's it doing up there all that time?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? And the details. They're classified as a superhero's secret identity.
Yeah.
Officially, the USSF. They claim it's for testing technologies, like, how materials hold up against radiation in space. There was even a quirky experiment involving seeds on one of its missions. But honestly, that almost seems too innocent, given all the secrecy surrounding this thing.
Right. It's like saying a stealth bomber is just for testing out new paint colors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, exactly.
And that's what makes this latest mission so intriguing. Word on the street is the X-37B, it's about to attempt a maneuver called aerobraking. And from what I've read, it could be a real game changer.
Absolutely. Aerobraking. It's this fascinating concept where the X-37B will essentially surf the very edge of Earth's atmosphere. It'll use that atmospheric drag to slow itself down and to shift its orbit, all without needing as much fuel as traditional methods.
Since the front of the engines is more like skimming a stone across a pond.
Yeah.
But in space.
That's a great analogy. And the articles we have actually point out that while aerobraking itself isn't brand new, it's never been attempted quite like this before, especially not with a spacecraft. As advanced as the X-37B, it's really pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible, and that sparked a lot of debate.
Right, and that's what has everyone buzzing. Because if they can pull this off,
well,
it kind of opens up a whole new world of possibility.
Exactly. The implications are huge.
Yeah.
And not just from a technological standpoint.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. We've got this super secretive space plane, capable of staying up there for ages, now testing maneuvers. That could make it even harder to track. What does all this mean for us down here on Earth? What are the potential consequences? The ethical dilemmas?
That's where things get really interesting. Because this mission, as these articles highlight, it isn't just about scientific advancement. It's a very clear signal. The USSF is sending a message with the X-37B and its maneuvers like aerobraking.
And that message is essentially, back off, don't touch my space stuff.
It's more nuanced than that. But essentially, yes, this mission, it's a power move, plain and simple.
So how does the rest of the world feel about that? I mean, are we talking full-blown space race 2.0 here?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Because as space becomes more accessible, more actors are entering the playing field, both state and private, and the rules, well, they're still being written.
Right, I imagine. Creates a whole host of new challenges and potentially some serious points of conflict.
Precisely. And that's something we'll explore in more depth as we delve further into this fascinating, if somewhat unsettling topic.
This is already a lot to unpack, and we've only just scratched the surface. We'll be back in a moment to dig deeper into the potential consequences of the X-37B's mission. Stay with us. So before we went to the break, we were talking about the X-37B, this top-secret space plane, and its upcoming aerobraking maneuver.
Right.
It's like they ripped something straight out of a science fiction novel and launched it into orbit.
Yeah, it's true. The technology is pretty mind-blowing. But what I find really interesting is the physics behind it. While they're complex, they are rooted in some pretty basic principles.
So you're saying even I, with my less than stellar physics background, can grasp this.
Yeah.
Hit me with it.
Okay, so think about like a shooting star. You've probably seen one. Streak across the night sky.
Right.
What you're witnessing is an object entering the atmosphere and burning up due to friction. Aerobraking utilizes that same atmospheric drag, but in a controlled manner.
Okay, so instead of turning into a fiery blaze of glory, the X-37B is aiming for a more graceful, controlled descent.
Exactly. It's going to dip into the very upper layers of the atmosphere, where the air is incredibly thin, and it'll use that drag to adjust its speed and trajectory without disintegrating.
So it's kind of like
Yeah.
a high-stakes balancing act,
Okay.
playing with the very edge of Earth's atmosphere.
Exactly. And what makes this mission so unique is that, according to both of these articles, this is a first for a spacecraft. As sophisticated as the X-37B, they're really pushing the boundaries here of what we thought was possible.
And that begs the question, why now? Why is the USSF suddenly so keen on mastering this maneuver?
Well, one of the articles actually quotes General Chance Saltzman, the
Yeah.
chief of space operations, and he calls this maneuver an incredibly important milestone.
Okay, so not exactly giving away all their secrets there.
Right, but I think reading between the lines, it seems pretty clear that the USSF sees aerobraking as a key to expanding their capabilities in space.
Which makes sense if you think about it. More efficient movement, less reliance on fuel, the ability to make these unpredictable maneuvers. Those are some pretty big advantages.
He is right. They're like,
Whether we're talking about scientific exploration or something a bit more strategic.
absolutely.
And I think that's what has a lot of people concerned about this potential new space race. Because if the USSF is out here making these kinds of advancements, who's to say others aren't right behind them or even ahead in some areas?
Right.
And what happens if things start to escalate?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are no easy answers. But one thing is certain, as space becomes more accessible, the potential for both cooperation and conflict increases exponentially.
So we're really entering uncharted territory here.
Yeah.
And that brings up a whole other layer of complexity, the ethical dimension.
Absolutely.
Because when we start talking about military maneuvers
Right.
and the potential for conflict in space, we really have to start asking ourselves some hard questions. Like, what are the rules of engagement in space? Who gets to decide these things? And what happens if something goes wrong?
Exactly. We're essentially writing the rule book as we go here. And that's a risky proposition, especially when you consider the potential consequences.
And those consequences, they're not just limited to
Yeah.
a few satellites.
Getting knocked out of commission, right?
Right. We could be talking about a cascade effect,
Yeah.
space debris causing more collisions,
Yeah.
disrupting communications and navigation,
Yeah.
even impacting our ability to monitor things like climate change here on Earth.
So it's not just about what happens out there in space. It's about the impact it could have on all of us down here on Earth.
Precisely.
And that's what makes this mission, this seemingly small step forward in space technology, so significant. It has such huge implications for the future.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the technology, the potential for this new space race, and the ethical dilemmas, but let's bring this back down to Earth for a moment. What does all of this mean for the average person? Should we be worried? That's a great question, and one that deserves its own deep dive.
It's easy to get wrapped up in the gee whiz factor of it all.
Right.
You know, all this amazing space technology.
Yeah.
But as we've been discussing, there's a lot more at stake here than just,
Yeah.
cool gadgets and pushing the boundaries and such.
Yeah, absolutely. This X-37B mission, it really highlights this pivotal moment that we're in. In space exploration, a time of incredible opportunity,
Yeah.
but also very real risk.
So we're sort of standing at the edge of a new frontier here. But for the average person, going about their day-to-day life, what does it all actually mean?
Well, for starters, it means that space is no longer this distant concept confined to, the realm of science fiction. It's becoming increasingly integrated into our daily lives, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, most of us rely on GPS or satellite internet these days.
Yeah.
It's just kind of scratching the surface.
Exactly. And as technology advances, as more countries and even private companies stake their claim to space, that influence is only going to grow.
Which brings us back to this idea of a potential space race. Things are definitely heating up.
They are. And what I find concerning is we don't really have a framework in place to manage that competition responsibly.
Yeah, one of the articles I read actually touched upon that, mentioned this growing problem of space debris.
Right. It's a critical issue. Every satellite we launch, every maneuver we make up there just adds to the clutter in Earth's orbit. And with each piece of debris, the risk of collision, that increases.
And those collisions, they don't just impact whatever got hit.
Right.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly. One collision could generate Thousands of pieces of debris, each one a potential projectile, capable of causing even more damage.
Wow.
It's a chain reaction that could easily spiral out of control, creating this hazardous environment in space, and then ultimately impacting life back here on Earth.
So it's not just about the future of space exploration, then. It's about the future of our planet.
Precisely. The decisions that we make today, the rules that we choose to implement or not implement, will have far-reaching consequences.
It's almost a paradox, isn't it? We're making these incredible leaps forward in terms of space travel and technology, yet at the same time, we also risk making space too dangerous to explore. And we're potentially jeopardizing our own planet in the process.
It's a very delicate balancing act, and one that requires global cooperation, transparency, and a real commitment to responsible practices in space.
And that's what makes this deep dive so crucial, by shedding light on these very important issues, by exploring the potential consequences of missions like the X-37B. Hopefully we can contribute to a
more nuanced conversation.
Exactly, because ultimately, the future of space exploration, and indeed the future of our planet, depends on our ability to act responsibly and to work together. This X-37B mission, with all of its secrecy and its technological marvels, it really does serve as a powerful reminder that we are at a crossroads, and the decisions that we make right now are going to determine the course of our future among the stars. That's something for all of us to think about. This is the deep dive, encouraging you to keep looking up, but also to keep asking those tough questions. Until next time,